Osa Odighizuwa getting the franchise tag, and Alex Cappa cut. We're digging into offensive linemen and running backs from the NFL scouting combine as the offseason in the NFL is off to a smashing start here on Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Appreciate you stopping by. Hit the thumbs up on YouTube. Let us know you did come by. And if you're new to the show, welcome. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast and hang out with us every day as we break down the NFL throughout the free agency, combine, post-combine, trades, the NFL draft season, of course, and into the 2025 regular season. Matt, let's start with some more NFL news to start our week here, and kind of a little bit of two surprises, two moves that I didn't really see coming. We knew that there was a lot of Stafford stuff we talked yesterday, and Deebo Samuel, we knew he was, allowed to seek a trade, and there's still some other players around the NFL that are seeking trades. We'll see if those players get traded or if they end up getting released and where their new homes are. But I didn't see Alex Cappa getting cut, and I don't know if that was something that was really out there because he was a good player. He was a big time free agent, and I might go off on a little bit of a tangent here on how I feel about NFL free agency and how some of this ends up going. And then Osa Odighizuwa got the franchise tag, and he wasn't a player I expected to be in the franchise tag realm, man.
Yeah, I think these are some bigger picture conversations, but it's worth just talking about the individuals. Let's start with Odighizuwa. Defensive tackle is a real problem for them, and I think that they just looked at it like we can't get any weaker here. We only have to add. And I really think the priorities for the Cowboys this offseason, big picture, are getting better running the football, getting better stopping the run. And he's not considered a run stopper. He's an up-the-field three technique. And I think he's starting to come into his own. I mean, that'd be a hard guy for them to lose. Is he worth 25.1 guaranteed? Probably not, at this point. But they're trying to buy some time to get a long-term extension, free up some cap space this year, so it's not 25 this year. But I also think it's just a real really indicative of just how healthy the league is. The cap went up like crazy. Yeah, this league is making money in an insane number. I mean, the viewership, the betting sponsors. I mean, it just shows that it takes a minute, but it trickles down to obviously the great players, the Mahomes and Allens and those guys, but even the level 2s, and I would even say the level 3 guys are all starting to really benefit too, that are coming up for contracts at the right time,
It's interesting because, and first of all,
it's going to trickle down to us. That's way down the line.
I mean, we can do something that didn't exist 10 years ago, 15 years ago, especially, and have full-time gigs talking about the NFL, and we're doing it from the confines of our cozy respective homes in our home studios, right? So we don't have to
covering bowling.
We don't have to be tethered to a desk anymore. In the NFL. We don't have to be even tethered to a radio station sometimes. So, Odighizuwa, he's not going to play on the franchise tag. So, are they angling to just buy more time so he doesn't hit free agency so they can pay him? This is a really good defensive tackle draft. Are they trying to dangle him in trade so they can get cheaper at some positions? Because this is a team that's had a lot of expenditures recently and hasn't really dipped their toe into the free agent market.
And they certainly have Parsons coming up too. I mean, that's the biggest thing that needs to get done very soon. I would think they want to keep him and add more of a nose-ish type guy because the one they drafted 2 years out of Michigan really hasn't done much. But I would think you want to just reinforce the interior of this defensive line and the interior of the defense overall. I would think there's a player that's ascending that you hate to lose. That's one of the things that teams hate. Like, a little bit of a project coming out of school, gets better every year, and then really starts to hit his peak looks like it's next year. Like, you don't want to groom him for somebody else, you know?
Talk to me about Alex Cappa.
Yeah.
Was this a function of him being, and this is sort of where it ties in with the Odighizuwa thing, and you were talking about how it's trickling down. I don't think it's trickling down enough to the mid-level of NFL player.
Me too.
One of the things I don't like is, and Alex Cappa is a perfect example, and there's a lot of NFL players where and look, we've talked about this. You were a creative writing major. I was trying to be, pragmatic, and I was trying to be like, okay, what's a degree I'll actually use when I go to college? Let's do a business degree. And I'm sitting in accounting class my first year, and I'm like, this is no chance. This sucks. I don't do accounting. And here
Economics.
I am, and I have to do accounting. We're talking about salary cap stuff, and it's like it's super frustrating for me. So like, I don't like talking about medical stuff. I don't like talking about accounting. I want to talk about the players that are on the field. And I love watching the guys who work out in shorts and break down how good of a football player they are. I don't want to do accounting. But one of the things that happens in the NFL is you overpay, or you pay as much as you possibly can for the best players, and you give them a 4-year contract, but then you cut them after 2 years. Not exactly the situation with Alex Cappa, but it's like they're worth everything in the world until they're worth nothing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, never mind. Let's get out from under that. And it's like, well, how much did you actually make of this deal? What are we actually doing when we're signing players? There's fake money thrown out there. There's an accounting side of thing. There's a real cash side of thing, what the team's actually paying the guy. Then there's what the salary cap says. Then there's what the agent says the guy got. And we roll with that. And then when we find the deal, it's actually different. And so we think a guy's making one thing, he's actually making something else. And then, teams are fudging the numbers and putting void years out there. And so in a lot of ways, it's like, man, NBA guaranteed contracts, Major League Baseball guaranteed contracts. I would love to just be like, this guy makes this much for this many years, and let's move on.
Would it just be that much easier?
Oh my God!
Signs an 8-year or $80 million 8-year deal. Well, it's $10 million a year, and he gets every dollar.
Until he's done. Like that's it. That's the deal. Yeah,
that's the deal. We signed a contract, and and it means something. Like that's basically what it comes down to. Two sides sign a contract, and thusly, the employer pays the employee everything on the contract. Isn't that how the world works everywhere else on the planet, give or take? Anyway,
where's Cappa as a player? Because I'm just looking at his PFF grades, and I didn't watch every snap of Cincinnati Bengals football this year, but after 3 years of his new contract, after signing that deal in 2022, coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's played a full allotment of snaps over the course of those last 3 years. He had 1,000 total snaps last year, and by far the worst grades. I mean, maybe going back to when he kind of barely played in his rookie year, small school guy. By the way, we're going to talk about another small school guy who they didn't overlap in college, but Zabel is maybe the next Alex Cappa here. But his grades, especially his pass blocking grade, was pretty awful this year for the Cincinnati Bengals. So is he a player that just kind of peaked and hit free agency, and then now he's going to be sort of a guy that bounces around the NFL, or is Alex Cappa still that dude at guard?
I always thought he was a little overrated to begin with. I didn't think it was the best signing of all time, but he has been reliable, snap eater type guy. Protection has been a problem, and it was really bad this year. What I don't know, and I would if I was close to the team, was he playing with a knee or an ankle or something that we didn't know about that he gutted through? It's a very guard-like thing to do. You know what I mean? I mean, that could be part of it. But I wanted to touch on the Bengals. So we have talked about this all offseason, that I think they are going to be making a lot of changes personnel-wise. And at the Combine, a lot of my buddies have been covering the Steelers, or buddies with Bengals guys have been covering the Bengals for a lot of years. Like some of those guys went on their radio. Some of them came on our radio, had a beer with them, that type of thing. Just divisional media people know each other from year and year after seeing each other in press boxes, etc. And I came away even more convinced that everybody understands the Burrow, Chase, Higgins contract situation. But Gesicki's up. I think they want to find another running back because they basically ran Chase Brown into the ground. Their interior O-line needs a lot of work, starting with Cappa. And frankly, they need like 8 defensive starters. So they have a big chunk of cap space right now. And this, to me, is just the beginning of the releases. They have a lot of defensive players, 5, 6, Sam Hubbard, guys like of that nature that are going to get whacked. But whacking them just opens up a starting spot. Like, none of the young guys are ready to take over. So, okay, you cut a guard. Well, now you need a guard. Okay, you cut a DN. Well, you need a DN. You cut a linebacker. Now you need a linebacker. So I just think that their starters could be as different as just about any team in the league, which I guess is good, but who knows? I mean, what you're going to have in Burrow, Chase, and Higgins just doesn't think you give as much freedom to get that done as you'd like,
You have to prioritize Trey Hendrickson, though, before T. Higgins, right? They wouldn't be that crazy to sign Higgins and then not help their defense out.
I think there's a 50% chance he gets traded. And the beat reporters we were chatting with seem to think the same, that he's not happy. He's expensive. He's starting to get up in age. They need to start hitting on draft picks. But then what do you have on defense? I mean, it was one of the worst defenses in the league with the sack leader.
Joe Burrow was an MVP candidate. You can't outscore people in the NFL.
No.
To that level. You got to put something out there on the defensive side of the ball, and like one draft with a couple of starters doesn't even fix that for you. So,
I mean, the Steelers played the Bengals late in the season twice, and I do these deep dives into stats, and everything about their offense is so good. I mean, top 3 basically. But it was exactly counteracted by exactly how bad everything on their defense was. I mean, they were just totally even Steven. Like, boy, they're the best passing team in the league. Well, they're the worst pass defense. That's exactly how it felt.
All right, we'll see what's going on. Like, kind of side eye on the Cincinnati Bengals. What's really the plan? How's this going to go for them? And don't waste these Joe Burrow years with a bad football team.
That's what worries me. In a Carson Palmer like manner. Are we a year away from Burrow going Myles Garrett on him, saying, I'm not into this anymore, man?
Oof. I don't like the sound of that.
No.
Next, let's talk offensive linemen in maybe the next group. Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals replace Cappa with one of these guys, offensive linemen and some running back standouts from the NFL Scouting Combine. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When it comes to FanDuel, there is a reason they are America's #1 sports book. And, that is just because there's so many ways to play. And I know the NFL season is over, and our listeners might be, bummed out by that. And they can't bet on any NFL games anymore. But you can still find those tasty NFL draft props, which is my favorite way to play, actually, as far as NFL betting goes and any football betting goes. I love the NFL draft props, and you can probably get a little advantage if you're listening to shows like this and your stuff when it comes to the NFL draft. And of course, you can bet on the next Super Bowl champion as well. But it's NBA season, and when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off, you can still bet on a fourth quarter comeback. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. And the app is super easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today or download the app. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's go to the offensive lineman, and I already teased it. We talked about the Humboldt State grad in Alex Cappa. Let's go to North Dakota State, who's just been a pipeline of offensive linemen into the NFL. And the quarterbacks haven't quite turned out from North Dakota State, but maybe there's a reason why those quarterbacks look so good, because they're developing a lot of talent around those quarterbacks and competing against teams that are just undermanned against all that talent. And when you want to find a draft riser, Matt, find a guy who's got good college tape, went to the Senior Bowl, knocked it out of the park, went to the Combine, knocked it out of the park. And that's what we're talking about with Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. Left tackle in college. He'll go inside in the NFL, and most likely it looks like center is where teams like him the most. And, laid it out there, 6'5" and 7/8, just a hair under 6'6" at the Combine, 312 pounds. And, shorter arms, 32 inches even, which is why he's going to be an interior player and not an offensive tackle, even though he still has some pretty good, height and size for a tackle. But how about this for 312 pounds? 36.5-inch vertical jump. He didn't run.
Know.
I think he would run pretty well, but just shows that explosive ability you see on tape. By far the best jump of any of the offensive linemen at the scouting combine. There's some good athletes out there.
He's very impressive. I mean, every step of the way, like you said, I mean, he's just knocking down every opponent in front of him, basically. Really athletic, smart. I mean, he screams. Like, I'm sure the Chiefs or the Eagles at the end of the first round are just hoping to death that he gets there. He's going to be the guy that goes at 20, though, that you say, wow, okay, I get it. You know, like, I think he's a surefire first-round pick. One thing I wanted to throw out was I watched all that stuff last night, and I was impressed with the athleticism overall of offensive linemen. I mean, it's just so many fewer fat, sloppy dudes. You know, I mean, it changed every year. I just throw that out there like, man, they just look better every year. But one thing I was disappointed about, kind of across the board, was very few players this year in Indianapolis at any position did short shuttles and 3 cones and those change of direction stuff. And one of my favorite combine stats is interior O linemen that run short shuttles in under 4.43 seconds are like home runs galore. And nobody beat that time because there's only like 7 or 8 of them that ran it, you know? So like this data point is becoming useless if nobody does the drill.
The only one, and I've seen this stat out there, and you said 4.43. I thought it was 4.47, but it's kind of like, you know, shorthand sub 4.5. So you're looking for 4.49 or lower is kind of my shorthand and looking for these guys. And there was only one guy that broke 4.5, even though so many of them didn't run it. And that was a player I've not watched yet out of Texas Tech, Caleb Rogers. And, 5.1 in the 40, nice little 10-yard split, sub 1.8, which is good. You want to, sub 1.7 is fantastic for an offensive lineman. And so that was kind of the only guy. 4.51 out of Boston College. Drew Kendall is another one. And, some of these guys late round picks, and look, we'll see some pro day numbers for this, but if you're a prospect, isn't that like, don't we already know this? Don't the agents already know this?
Yeah, I know it.
You work on that and everybody running it at the, especially if you're quick, like someone like Gray Zabel, and you have that explosive ability, you would think he would do really well at that and is an athletic guy. And so I'm kind of surprised some of these guys didn't run the short shuttle, because that's one of the ways that NFL people are really, and look, the 40-yard dash too. And we see this every single year, and I guess it's a good time to bring this up, Matt, is the fast guys running fast isn't that impressive, even though it's nice to see a guy run 4.2s and 4. It's cool. But if I could take the athletic testing portion of the combine, I want the 40 times in the short shuttles of the offensive line. Much more indicative than how they're going to be in the NFL versus a wide receiver or a cornerback, and they're 40.
100%. And there were some really good offensive line 40 times here. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that were under 5 seconds, and then quite a few that were just a smidge over 5. Ursery from Minnesota at 5.01. But the guy that stood out to me most, that like if I were in your shoes at the Niners, where they picked 10 or 9,
11,
11, okay, I would do cartwheels if I could get Membou from Missouri. I think he might be a total superstar, whether it's tackle, guard, I don't care. I mean, he's got it all to me.
He was the first prospect I watched deep dive in this process, because he was the 49ers 11th pick, mock draft pick for Dane Brugler in his first mock draft of the offseason. And I watched him, and he looked like kind of a guard because of his build, 6'4" and a quarter, 332 pounds, moved
thick,
really
wide.
Well. Man, I like this prospect, and his arms are 33 and a half, which is long enough. And you could tell he was athletic. He's a young prospect. And it was like, I like him. I don't love him at 11, but then you can kind of dare to dream when you see him work out. And by the way, first of all, you get a half a round bump if you are screaming at the top of your lungs.
How about that?
While you're running your 40, like you're in Braveheart. Like that was awesome.
I thought of Vikings too, or so charge him with like a battle axe. Right?
Give me that guy. 4.91, and you start to look at 1.74, which is fantastic. The 10-yard split, like he's a super athletic guy, 30-inch vertical, which is solid. Not ideal length, but enough length for him to stick at tackle. Now, could he be an all-pro guard versus like just a really good offensive tackle. We'll see how some teams view Armand Membou. He was on the right side, not the left side. Not a big deal, but it's not ideal if you're trying to find a left tackle of the future necessarily for the body type that Armand Membou is. But a prospect I like a lot. And when you start really the profile starts to look a lot like Tristan Wirfs. Because his scouting report was nearly identical coming out. Young prospect, has all this ability. He played right tackle? Maybe we like him better at guard. Falls to pick whatever it was, 13, and it was like the fourth offensive tackle taken in that class. Armand Membou has that level of testing numbers and is a similar prospect with the way we've talked about him leading up. But then you bet on the traits, right? And is he, just a stud offensive tackle in the NFL? And again, a young prospect too. So, that's something where you watch the tape and you look at his athletic testing, you think, man, he could get even a lot better than he is currently.
Like Wirfs too, I hadn't thought of that comp. A lot of success playing other sports in his life too. Wirfs was a big time wrestler and track and field guy. I think he threw discus or shot or something like that. And you can see it in the way that they move too. Pretty good group of O-linemen too. I mean, I didn't see Savania, the Arizona tackle guard, running like he did.
Yeah.
I'm also starting to get enamored. Like, this sounds so stupid, but no one's been talking about Georgia linemen on either side of the ball, the 300 pounders, D tackles and O linemen. But I'm like, these guys are from Georgia. I mean, no wonder they're good and talented. Like, why aren't we talking about them a month ago?
Well, yeah, it's funny because we talked about the edge guys and Walker and Michael Williams. They didn't run and work out, and the offensive linemen show up and be like, yeah, we're freaks too. 4 and 5 stars are in Georgia. We're like crazy athletes. You're like, oh my God. Okay.
With a cool mullet.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you got to have running it back to 1990 with the mullets here. Savania was a crazy tester.
Yeah,
the guy that everyone's like, oh well, he's clearly going to be a guard in the NFL. I was like, well, he's right there with Membou, 6'4", 324, big hands, long arms, and 4.95 40, even a better 10-yard split than Membou. And we're not even talking about Savania as a first round tackle that he used to be in some mocks there and was like, no, he's a guard. So interesting how these teams will look at him, and you make a lot of money if you're a tackle over a guard and get drafted a little bit higher in a lot of cases, which is going to be the opposite situation for Will Campbell, who showed up with 32.5-inch arms, which kind of I think people knew they'd seen testing in the past for Will Campbell. So people expected him to have shorter arms, just a hair under 6'6", 6'5" and 7/8, 319, tested well, moved well, 4.98 in the 40, 32-inch vertical, fantastic workout. He's just got shorter arms. So guess what? He's a guard. He's going to get the Skoronski treatment, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably better prospect than Skoronski, and maybe he's Joe Thuney, one of those type of big time guard that when in a pinch has to kick outside. And in this draft, I don't know if it'll crush him. Would you still be happy with him at 11? I kind of would be if I were you. I mean, maybe he's not Trent Williams' replacement, but he's going to be something for me.
I liked his tape originally, and he was the second offensive lineman I did after Membou. I liked his tape better than Membou. I liked Josh Simmons' tape the best as far as looking at a future left tackle. But
Connerly are interesting as the left tackles, and Connerly had a good one too.
Yeah, Connerly has a little bit less power to his game. He also had a fantastic workout here. I want to get to some other offensive linemen and running back prospects from the combine. But short answer is I think Membou ends up being the first offensive lineman taken. Injury thing with Simmons. Guard for Will Campbell. A team might just say, well, Will Campbell's the best offensive lineman, and so we're going to take him instead. But if you're looking for a future tackle, I think probably Membou made himself the money and kind of solidified himself as maybe the top offensive tackle in this draft.
Yep, I tend to agree. Top O lineman. Yeah.
Next, more O linemen. Let's talk some running backs, some standouts, some fast guys as well. Next. So we've got the top of the draft figured out with offensive linemen. I think if I had to bet today, I think the first lineman is Membou. I think the second one probably is Will Campbell. And then maybe Kelvin Banks third. He looked good, not quite as athletic, but really solid player, solidified himself as a mid to late round guy. And then maybe the fourth guy, and only fourth because he's an interior guy, is Gray Zabel, what other offensive lineman stood out to you? Who did you see out there that you're like, okay, this guy really solidified his draft stock for me in Indy?
Yeah, just Connerly because he's a tackle. But I thought that there were a lot of interesting dudes I didn't know a ton about, starting with the Georgia guys that have something wrong with them. Like Eli Cox, the center from Kentucky. He's a pure center. But like Joshua Gray, I saw him move from Oregon State. And I knew he was, but I hadn't studied him. And he's got really short arms. But, I mean, like, he's gonna be some kind of interior offensive lineman at the next level. Same with Drew Kendall from Boston College. I'm just kind of looking down the 40s of who did well and who rings a bell in my head. Logan Brown is the guys keep growing on me too, as a right tackle from Kansas, with all the things you're looking for there as well. And there are the big guys that didn't have wonderful times, the Anthony Beltons, and Tyler Booker didn't do great, but it's not really their game.
Yeah, Tyler Booker probably hurt himself as far as, the battle for being the top interior offensive lineman. Can he be a first rounder? Because you got to be a special prospect for teams to say, you're a guard, you're an interior offensive lineman, and we're still going to draft you in the first round, and especially draft you like in the top 20 picks or something like that.
Right.
Gray Zabel versus Graham Barton from last year.
Really interesting.
Who's
interesting? Yeah.
Higher? Do you like Zabel more now than Graham Barton last year? Because Graham Barton went 26 to the Bucks. That's pretty high for a center.
It is pretty. I think I would take Barton. I thought he was. I think he's bigger. I didn't really see any holes in Barton's game. Yeah. Not that like Zabel's dripping with him, but Barton was a really good prospect.
Gosh, Barton just got people fired up with the way he played and buried guys. Really doesn't quite play that way. But I wouldn't.
Close though.
Zabel goes kind of in between where Jackson Powers Johnson and Zabel and Barton went last year, probably something like that. I was actually surprised how far Jackson Powers Johnson fell.
Me too. I think there was a little bit off the field, and there might have been a little bit of a knee, something or other, but all that looks good,
One more standout on a kind of local kid here, Jackson Slater, another small school guy, Sacramento State, 6'3", 311, interior guy, shorter arms, but 5'01" in the 40, and moved around really well. Membou, Marcus Bowe as well as someone who solidified his stock, and he didn't really run, but he's a player that's really interesting on the interior. So yeah, a lot of good offensive linemen, a lot of fast offensive linemen, a lot of fast wing backs as well. Trevor Etienne ran a 4.3, so official 4.42. It would look like a 4.43, I think, but he like stumbled and slipped and still like was able to. He was flying out there. That was an interesting 40 time for me. But anyway, a lot of interesting fast guys at running back. Who stood out to you at running back?
Well, I tweeted these things just a couple, like an hour or two ago. 8 running backs had a 38 or higher inch vertical. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, 38, and some of these dudes are 220, like Hampton. I mean, there's big dudes. And 8 running backs ran 4.4 or 4.43 or better. I mean, like, it's a rare class. And I think you have to start with Tootin from Virginia Tech. And he worries me a little bit because we all knew he was going to be fast, explosive. And frankly, he was more so than I expected. And his stock should rise. He has a massive fumbling problem. I mean, so if your running back coach has a history of curing fumblers, I'm using a day 2 pick on this guy, but he could be that guy that just can't get on the field because you can't count on him. But boy, is he athletic, man.
Yeah, 5'9", 206.
Pretty rocked up.
Yeah, pretty rocked up build there. 4.32 in the 40 and a 40.5-inch vertical. But even more impressive than that was the 1.49 10-yard split. Like, that is instant.
It's crazy. Right there. Yeah. I mean, totally explosive.
Cam Scatterbo, 39.5-inch vertical for him. He's 5'9.5", which is good. 219. He's a stout running back. He didn't run the 40. I have a feeling that was pretty telling because it wasn't going to be as fast as some of these guys. So probably a smart move by him, but showed that he has some explosive ability with that 39.5-inch vertical. He
very much does. And a really good receiver too. I was the table next to us at the combine had him on. I think it was the Arizona Cardinals. He did a local hit. And so I was up close with him. His body type doesn't look like he'd be a whole heck of a lot of fun to tackle. That's for sure. But boy, there's so many backs in this draft that just have really good numbers. And everyone's talking about Omarion Hampton now from North Carolina as not only a guaranteed first rounder, but maybe he's closer to Genty than whoever number 3 is to Hampton. And I also thought Judkins had a really good show that maybe top 50 should be pretty much a lock for him now from Ohio State. Both the Ohio State guys.
Yeah, both the Ohio State guys, explosive. Love Quinshon Judkins, and I didn't know the background on Judkins, that he was like a sponsored skateboarder.
Yeah, like really good. Yeah,
for NFL players. 5'11 and a half, 221. It's hard to even imagine someone that's thick on a skateboard too. 4.4840, which is a good time for him. 38 and 38.5 inch vertical. Great time for Omarion Hampton. Love seeing a top back do everything and throwing down. He was 5'11 and a half, 221 with a 4.4640 and 38 inch vertical. Genty didn't run, but short, stocky guy. He's stout at 211 pounds, only 5'8 and a half. And he didn't run obviously, but
is this being too nerdy with Judkins? When I heard about the skateboard thing, I'm like, ooh, fearless, balance, creative. Yeah. Like that's great. I've never heard of a skateboarder come to the NFL.
Big guys aren't good on a skateboard. It's not conducive to being a large human and a powerful human. Now, look, he was doing this when he was younger and he was a kid, and I think he kind of went full-time football and stopped doing the skateboarding thing as a little
bit dangerous
pro skater, after like the age of 15 and whatever. So he's probably, a smaller guy, wasn't weighing 221 pounds, but fearlessness and footwork and balance, obviously. Yeah.
Creativity.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cool background for a running back.
I like that a lot. Made me like him a lot more. So biggest winners for me were Quinshon Judkins, because the skateboard background, and Armand Membou for like yelling and screaming while he's running his 40-yard dash.
Sign me up with those dudes. Absolutely. Bring them to town.
That's scouting for you right there. Team Peacock for both.
But hey, have some personality. That's important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. What stood out to you most with the offensive linemen and the running backs? We're going to get to the back seven and your questions here very soon. Get those post-combine mailbag questions in for this week's mailbag episode at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter, or drop a question in the YouTube comments. Subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.